In the beginning, there were gods and men who dined above the peaks of ancient Greece. In Mount Olympus rose, too long to pen, made through the day as one man aimed to tease. The gods invited Tantalus to sit amongst themselves throughout a formal feast, for which he served his son to much offend the deities he should have fairly pleased. Now Zeus, enraged, condemned the jester down to thirst and hunger in eternal flame. He bore his curse in Hades' realm of death. He stood inside a pit to no acclaim. The king bent down to drink from pools that drained. The king reached out for fruits from him retained. And so the legend tells, Tantalus, son of Zeus and mythic king of Sipylus, never drank or ate again. He stood in a fresh pool whose water shrunk as long as Tantalus bent down to drink. A tree weighed down with fruit by bare measure beyond his grasp. His existence was one of unfulfilled craving, and his true curse, that of being forever insatiable. As a people, we have always held the notion that there is an interior and an exterior, that we are an interior essence, intimate and divine, trapped inside a body. We are told that inside the walls of our body lies our true, authentic self, and that our goal in life is to excavate it, recover it, commune with it. I, for one, have never found it, mainly because the core of its allure is its evasiveness, its unreachability. It makes for a good chase we call life. Now, remember that story I told you at the beginning about Tantalus and his punishment? Well, our interior essence is the water Tantalus stands in, and as we bend to drink, drains away. It is the fruit on the tree, the fruit that is just a tad too far for us to grasp. We are presented with the purpose of recovering our essence, a fruit we never seem to reach, to search for something that by its very interior nature we will never find. And it is this holy search for the interior that gives the concept of a persona a bad rep, because to have an interior you must also have an exterior, whose sole purpose is to mask that essence, to hide it, conceal it, even from ourselves. And so the appearance, the body, what is known in this dualistic scheme as the exterior self, we come to see as truth's lifelong nemesis, the antidote of authenticity, the jewel-encrusted cover of a poor and humbled self, the gentlemanly feature of a violence-ridden beast, the Dr. Jekyll to a real-life Mr. Hyde, the mask of a devil when he comes down to earth. The exterior becomes a canvas for the paintbrush of insincerity presented to us as a persona, a fabricated, calculated, and highly produced personage ulterior to our true selves, a mask. Hello, I'm Tatiana Balcarcel, and I am here to talk about the persona. Now, the word itself, persona, comes from the Etruscan fursu, which means mask, masked man, actor, according to some modern interpretations. In ancient Rome, the persona was a physical, theatrical mask. And this was a version of the persona I was introduced to from an early age, right? Disguise, a nom de plume, always carrying this gently malignant connotation of deception and trickery. For example, in Shakespeare plays, when the jester dresses up and disguises himself in order to wreak havoc on the main characters, or in the form of evil alter egos where the persona is shown to be an elaborate and overproduced costume. In a more covert way, I see the same condemnation of the persona in everyday life when we look down upon the overdressed and overstylized and meticulously presented as merely fake or superficial. An over-attentive care for the appearance I was trained to look upon as vain and unintellectual. The persona, this dressage that can take many forms, whether it be highly rehearsed and mimicked mannerisms, makeup, dress, over-edited Instagram pictures, seem to me a kind of social mask that we reject in these newly found 21st century search for authenticity, just as we rejected the 16th century Shakespearean fool costumes in the defense of honesty. But what are we being authentic to? Our mysterious interior selves? And at what cost to our body and our relationship with the physical world? I want to know what we can gain from deconstructing this idea of a soul interior identity, what we can gain from assuming the persona and navigating the world in a self-created skin, because there's no tearing away the one we already have. Whether we want to or not, we will always show a face and a body to the world. Now, at the cusp of the 19th century, psychiatrist Carl Jung came to a similar conclusion. He theorized that in relation to the exterior, the individual developed a social face, a mask designed to, in one hand, conceal one's true nature, and on the other hand, make an impression upon the other. But it's really the second part I want to focus on, to make an impression upon the other. To make an impression. He talks of it as if it were a thing besides ourselves, because when it is buried in the subconscious, it becomes one. So, instead I ask you, what impression do you want to make by embodying the persona that is already there instead of denying its existence? Now, when I was first thinking of this, I decided to experiment on myself. So I set aside some preconceived notions of who I was and thought of who I wanted to be, who I could be. So I got myself a mullet, some bell-bottom jeans, and an acid-washed Sex Pistols t-shirt. Then I got myself a shaggier mullet, some Marcello Mastroianni glasses, and a handkerchief. I was Sheena the punk rocker and a dreary intellectual, and honestly, for most days, just someone in a Quentin Tarantino True Romance hoodie. And the thing is that whether or not I made this impression by acting and dressing a certain way on others, I made it on myself, which was much more empowering than making an impression upon others ever could be. However, Jung also said that through the persona, one can lose all consciousness and knowledge of oneself, merging into the identical faces of civilized society or fading into someone else entirely. Mainly, I think, because he saw inside our decrepit, deformed faces the slipping treasure trove of the one and true self. The water in Tantalus' pool, if you will, he saw it draining. And to this I say, what consciousness and knowledge of ourselves did we have to begin with? Because the identity is constantly evolving. It is interwoven every day. It is constructed through expressions, gestures, small joys, every time you try something new. To me, at least, it seems a little like collecting things. You maybe have a jar, put some pennies in it, but the fact that you're looking at another penny at the time doesn't mean that the entire jar of pennies disappears. So why would venturing into the realms of overproduction and over-stylization and borderline grotesqueness cancel other parts of yourself entirely? I think this is some of the freedom we can afford when we slip out of this malicious, dishonest persona built in a world where anything physical eclipses the sacrosanct interior. And in living this life, even for a few months, I realized that I am not a punk rocker or a pipe-smoking intellectual with cosmic light gravitas, but that I can be decadent, sometimes even a little snobby, dissident and strong. I was able to experience certain qualities within myself without the entire penny jar disappearing. So, consciously creating a persona allowed me to explore myself, who I was, who I wasn't, who I wanted to be. However, Jung also said that it is civilized society, its ways and structures, that requires us to wear this mask. He visualized no scenario where the persona did not abide in some way by societal norms. So any dissenter would have to reject the persona and the body or initial mask and barrier altogether, right? Well, I would be perfectly fine with this interpretation if it weren't for one very particular art form: drag. Some of us understand drag as a form of male or female impersonation. However, I would like to broaden this definition because you see in the 80s, home to the unapologetically fabulous underground ballroom scene, it was scarcely men dressing up as women, but trans women walking, dressing, and performing as traditional female archetypes. The performative qualities of the ball itself, this exaggerated dress and crafted attitude, outline the synthetic nature of gender, of female customs and female clothes. So that by dressing exactly as the country club women that denied them a place in the world, the women of ballroom were able to outline the fabricated nature of their womanhood and privileged femininity, making a statement against the system by over-abiding by its rules, in fact, executing them perfectly, showing how the overproduction and over-stylization associated with a persona can become an important source of resistance and change. Now, in the 21st century, and with the arrival of hit show RuPaul's Drag Race, we can see the persona in drag's evolution even more clearly, because in some notorious cases, the contestants abandoned the 80s ballroom feminine realness and poise for the style of camp. Now, you may or may not remember camp being a theme for the Met Gala, but it is essentially an aesthetic, a style of unrepenting bad taste, irony, cliches that is characteristically performative and colorful and hyperbolic. The campy drag queen not only puts on makeup for the backstage, but for the Denny's down the street, to loosely quote Trixie Mattel. Theirs is a show of hyper-femininity, concentrated in their drag persona, so that by the same over-performance, they outline the ridiculous nature of a soul interior identity by making fun of traditional archetypes. And you can see this in the ever-smiling Southern gal, Trixie Mattel, or the elastic Russian spy, Katya, or even the resident scary goth lady, Sharon Needles, right? In drag, the persona is a reminder of the performative qualities of everyday life, and in that sense is a form of resistance to a system that fools us into thinking that we are not labeling ourselves by being natural. Now, another movement that used the appearance and the body to spread not only awareness, but straight-up polemic was the punk movement. Yes, they are anti-racism, anti-fascism, and all in all, the definition of anti-establishment. And yet, for a band of people who declared war on an oppressive, normalized society that is increasingly consumeristic and superficial, the punks didn't decide to take all their makeup off as a sign of protest, but rather created an entire aesthetic brand around their movement. The excessive spikes, the crafted hair, the heavy eyeliner. They used their appearance to bring attention to their ideologies, to manifest and express their rage before the world. To me, they saw this so-called mask or body and painted on it, put makeup on it, knowing that it would never really go away. I was enamored by these cases where the appearance, the persona, became a source of power, of freedom, of expression and mobility in the world. Especially me being someone who never really cultivated a relationship with their body. On one hand, because I thought I didn't need to, and on the other hand, because by going out in the same pair of pants every day, I thought I was saying I didn't care what other people thought of me, and that I was rejecting some societal norm that said I had to dress to impress. Now, I don't think you have to dress to impress. You can dress to reject, to scandalize, to disgust. But I was missing the fact that you have to dress. A very simple truth, recognized and exploited for its full potential by drag performers, ballroom contestants, and punks alike. Now, when we reject the appearance, we naively assume there is a neutral world, an aesthetic world where it does not exist. And so, in the name of utmost truth and authenticity, you post without a filter and walk out with your hair uncombed to peel away the layers that disguise your inner self. Because we as a society reject superficiality and excess and anything that acknowledges or enhances the shameful, deceitful appearance. Because under this dualism of exterior, interior, what we really want is for the body to disappear. And this countercurrent of filterless naturalism gives us the illusion that if we simply set aside the eyeshadow, it can. But this idea of naturality really only masks the fact that our bodies are unfazable and the persona inescapable. Now, having put the filterless away these past few months, I gave myself the space to explore who I am, but more importantly, who I want to be, by being anything but who I thought I was. So I can't tell you to just adopt a persona and live within its means, but to maybe grab another penny and put it in your jar, to face the world not only with your mind, but also with your body. I am saying that there is an empty canvas out there, waiting to be duly splattered. So, the real question becomes whether we want to see the body, our initial mask and barrier, as a wall, a prison, or as a conduit to our ever-evolving identities. So I'll ask you again, what impression do you want to make? Thank you.